Let's bow our heads in silent prayer.
請低頭默禱。
Amen. In the name of Lord Jesus Christ, we begin our Sabbath Day first service.
本耶穌聖名開始我哋安息日第一節嘅聚會。
We thank the Lord for guiding us through this past week.
我哋感謝主帶領我哋一個星期平安。
We're finally able to enter into God's rest.
讓我哋能夠進入神俾到我哋嘅安息。
May God bless each and every one of us.
願神祝福我哋每一位。
So that we can be reminded through God's words and also our souls may be refreshed.
讓我哋從神嘅話語得到提醒，而且讓我哋嘅心得到呢個喜樂。
So before we share in the words of God,
我哋喺未分享到你之前，
let's rise up and sing a hymn to praise His name.
讓我哋一齊起立嚟到頌讚佢嘅名。
Let's rise up and sing hymn 129.
我哋請起立唱讚美詩129首。
Dear brothers and sisters, peace to you all.
各位弟兄姊妹，大家平安。
Thank God for His arrangement that your brother has the opportunity to sermonize today.
感謝主嘅安排，讓小弟有機會今天嚟到同大家一齊分享主嘅話。
Today's title I'd like to share with you is God Understands.
今天與大家分享嘅題目就係神明白。
So this statement is to us as believers is very obvious and very familiar.
咁呢個題目啦，對於我哋信主嘅人啦，我哋都係明白而且係熟悉㗎。
But it's also important that we constantly remind ourselves of this teaching.
但係我哋需要常常嚟到係提醒我哋有關呢方面嘅教訓，
Especially in life,
特別喺我哋嘅生活裏面，
when we face and go through many trials and experiences.
當我哋面對各種各樣嘅呢個考驗嘅時候，
Life is full of joyous times.
人生有時係有呢個喜樂㗎。
Life is full of memorable times.
人生亦都充滿咗好多嘅回憶㗎。
Life is full of struggles.
但係人生咧亦都係充滿咗呢啲嘅掙扎。
And unfortunately, life is full of sad times as well.
但係好不幸嘅，人生亦都係充滿咗好多不幸嘅事情。
Whether we are in times of joy or in times of sadness,
不論我哋喺生活上喜樂或者係憂傷，
our God understands.
我哋嘅神佢係明白㗎。
He will know what it is that is causing us to be joyful.
佢知道有乜嘢東西會讓我哋係喜樂㗎。
He will know what it is that is causing us to be sad.
佢亦都知道有咩東西讓我哋係憂傷㗎。
We may not see it.
或許我哋係看不見，
We may not feel it,
或許我哋係感受唔到，
but God understands.
但係神佢係明白㗎。
God will know what it is that is causing us to be angry.
神知道我哋為乜嘢係要到發怒。
God will know what it is that causes us to be discontent.
神亦都知道我哋為乜嘢係唔能夠滿足。
Whether it's something good or something bad, God understands.
不論係好與壞啦，神都明白㗎。
Let's look at the book of Hebrews.
我哋請翻開呢個希伯來書
Hebrews chapter 4.
第4章。
Hebrews chapter 4,
希伯來書第4章
verse 15 to 16.
15至到16節。
Verse 15.
15 節
For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
15節，因我們的大祭司，並非不能體恤我們的軟弱， 他也曾凡事受過試探，與我們一樣，只是他沒有犯罪。16節，所以我們只管坦然無懼的來到施恩的寶座前，為要得憐恤，蒙恩惠作隨時的幫助。
Here, the author of Hebrews tells us that we should confidently come before God.
希伯來書嘅作者提醒我哋我哋應當係坦然無懼嚟到神嘅面前。
In particular, when we should come before Him when we are weak or when we are feeling at our lowest.
當我哋軟弱嘅時候，孤單嘅時候我哋更要嚟到佢嘅面前。
Then God will grant us His grace.
咁樣神就會賜俾我哋嘅恩惠。
So that through God's understanding and through God's mercy,
藉著神嘅對我哋嘅明白，以及神施憐憫俾我哋，
we can receive help in our time of need.
喺我哋需要嘅時候神就作我哋嘅幫助。
Because God understands all things,
因為神係知道所有嘅一切事情。
He is someone whom we can actually share our joy with.
佢就係嗰位能夠與我哋一齊共享我哋嘅喜樂㗎。
But also we can trust upon Him when we are not so joyful.
但係當我哋唔係咁喜樂嘅時候，我哋亦都係信靠佢㗎。
In God, we have someone we can confide in through prayer.
喺神嗰邊我哋可以用禱告嚟到係按佢祈求。
Because God understands,
因為神佢係明白㗎。
He will know how we're feeling.
佢知道我哋嘅感受。
He will have a solution.
佢有佢嘅解決嘅方法。
He can open a way for us when we are in trouble.
當我哋遇到問題嘅時候，佢會為我哋開一條出路。
And if we continue to remember this,
如果我哋能夠係咁樣繼續明白呢一點嘅話，
remember it,
我哋記得嘅話，
we should be comforted, we should be encouraged.
我哋就會得到安慰，得到鼓勵啦。
Because unlike non-believers, we, as though those who follow Jesus, have hope in life.
我哋信主嘅人唔好似嗰啲唔信主嘅人一樣，我哋信主嘅人，我哋係跟隨主㗎。
And in hope, we have hope in life.
我哋喺我哋嘅人生當中，我哋有呢個盼望㗎。
So while God understands all things about us,
神係知道我哋一切所有㗎。
the question is whether we understand all things about ourselves.
問題就係我哋對我哋自己嘅一切係咪都係明白啦？
As part of today's sharing, I would like to pose 3 questions for us to think about.
接咗今天呢個題目啦，小弟就提出3點大家嚟到思考一下。
So the first question is about our current present life.
第一個問題就係我哋目前嘅呢個生活如何？
So do I understand why I am experiencing what I am facing today?
我明白到我今日所面對嘅，我是否係明白嗎？
Why am I suffering, for example?
例如話，我點解會受苦咧？
Why am I angry?
點解我係發怒咧？
Why am I joyful?
點解我喜樂咧？
Why am I discontent?
點解我唔嚟到知足咧？
In order to understand this,
為咗要明白呢一啲嘅問題，
we need to reflect and look back at a time when we weren't suffering or when we weren't angry.
我哋就要反省一下，當我哋冇受苦嘅時候，當我哋冇嚟到係發怒嘅時候，
or reflect back at a time when we became joyful or a time when we weren't discontent.
當我哋要回想下，我哋以前係喜樂嘅時候，我哋係滿足嘅時候。
Yeah. If we do this, we can identify the root of the matter.
如果我哋能夠係有咁樣嘅回想嘅話，我哋就能夠係有呢個解決嘅辦法啦。
We can see the root of where things began.
我哋能夠睇到呢件事情嘅發生嗰條路啦。
The root of the matter could be a lacking that we have identified in ourselves.
嗰個問題嗰條路咧，就係我哋缺乏認識我哋自己。
問題個根
問
the
題
beginning.
問題嘅根
It could be a lacking in ourselves or perhaps a lacking in other people.
或者係因為我哋嘅缺乏，或者問題而係別人嘅缺乏。
And if this is the case,
如果係咁嘅樣子嘅話，
then we have something upon which we can focus upon.
我哋或者可以嚟到專注一啲嘅事情。
We can try to correct through prayer and spiritual cultivation.
我哋可以用禱告啦，或者用靈修嚟到係改正佢。
And if we are really serious about this,
如果我哋係好認真對待呢啲嘅事情嘅話，
then along with prayer and also God's help,
我哋藉助禱告，藉助神嘅幫助，
we will be able to overcome these challenges.
我哋能夠係勝過呢啲嘅一切嘅挑戰。
Now, if we take the prophet Jonah as an example,
例如我哋可以舉出呢個約拿為一個例子。
we know that he became angry when the city of Nineveh repented.
我哋知道當尼尼微城嘅人佢哋悔改之後啦，但係約拿反而佢生氣啦。
And because these people repented, God spared their lives.
因為尼尼微城嘅人悔改，所以神冇嚟到係毀滅佢哋。
Jonah was displeased and he was very angry with the ways things had turned out.
約拿佢看見佢非常之唔喜悅，佢唔知道點解呢個事情會咁樣發生。
He was angry because, according to his will, he felt it was right for these Gentiles, these evil people, to be punished by God.
佢發怒，佢認為呢啲嘅惡人呢啲嘅外邦嘅人應該要受到神嘅懲罰。
Now, before Jonah became angry,
喺約拿佢未發怒之前，
he wasn't angry because he was acting according to his will.
佢冇嚟到發怒，因為佢係按照佢嘅辦法去做。
He was doing whatever he wanted to do to ensure that his will would come to pass.
佢盡佢所能嚟到去做，讓佢嘅意思能夠係成就。
Now, let's read the book of Jonah, chapter 3.
我哋打開約拿書第3章。
Jonah, chapter 3.
約拿書第3章
Let's look at verse 10.
第10節。
Verse 10. Then God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God relented from the disaster that he had said he would bring upon them, and he did not do it. 請讀。
於是神察看他們的行為，見他們離開惡道，他就後悔，不把所說的災禍降與他們了。
Let's also read Jonah chapter 4, verse 1 to 4.
喺第4章1至到4節。
Jonah chapter 4, verse 1 to 4.
4章1至到4節。
But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he became angry. So he prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, was not this what I said when I was still in my country? Therefore I fled previously to Tarshish, for I know you are a gracious and merciful God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, one who relents from doing harm. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. Then the Lord said, Is it right for you to be angry? 請讀。
這時約拿大大不悦，且甚發怒，就禱告耶和華說：耶和華，我在本國的時候，豈不是這樣說麼？我知道你是有恩典、有憐憫的神，不輕易發怒，有豐盛的慈愛，並且後悔不降所說的災，所以我急速逃往他施去。耶和華啊，現在求你取我的命吧，因為我死了比活着還好。耶和華說：你這樣發怒，合乎理麼？
So these verses we can see the explanation as to why Jonah was angry.
咁我哋剛才所讀嘅經文啦，我哋就明白約拿為乜嘢佢會發怒。
And so we can see that God also asks whether it was right for Jonah to be angry.
神亦都喺度問約拿你咁樣發怒合乎理麼？
And this was actually an opportunity to enable Jonah to self-examine himself.
其實呢個亦都係一個好嘅機會，讓約拿啦佢自己能夠反省佢自己。
To evaluate whether his anger was actually for the right reasons.
嚟到俾佢知道佢嘅發怒係咪係一個好嘅理由咧？
We can very easily work out that actually it is not right for Jonah to be angry.
我哋睇落去，我哋就知道其實約拿係唔應該嚟到係發怒㗎。
Because Jonah, he acted according to his will.
因為約拿佢所作嘅係按照佢自己嘅意思去做。
He wanted things to turn out the way that he wanted.
佢想要事情嘅發生係按照佢嘅心意嚟到去做嘅。
What Jonah had neglected and forgot was the wider and higher will of God.
然而呢個約拿佢係忽視到神有咁高嘅旨意。
And this will of God is for all mankind to be taught the words of God.
神嘅旨意就係讓所有嘅人都能夠遵照神嘅說話。
And also for all mankind to be saved.
亦都讓所有嘅人都能夠係得救。
Let's look at the same book, verse 10 to verse 11.
我哋睇第4章第10至到11節。
Verse 10 to 11.
10至到11節。
But the Lord said, You have pity on the plant for which you had not labored nor made it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which are more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left, and much livestock?
耶和華說：這蓖麻不是你栽種的，也不是你培養的，一夜發生，一夜乾死。你尚且愛惜，何況這尼尼微大城，其中不能分辨左手右手的，若有12萬多人，便有許多牲畜，我豈能不愛惜呢？
Here we see God is correcting the mindset of Jonah.
喺呢度我哋睇到神嚟到挑戰呢個約拿佢嘅想法。
God explains his mercy that was bestowed upon the city of Nineveh.
神嚟到解釋佢嘅慈愛嚟到臨到呢個尼尼微所有嘅人。
Now this incident teaches us to never forget the importance of God's words.
呢件事即係讓我哋嚟到明白，我哋唔能夠忘記神嘅旨意㗎。
God's words.
神嘅工作㗎。
Word. 說話。
神嘅說話㗎。
Because God's words can guide us in our lives.
神嘅說話能夠帶領我哋嘅人生㗎。
God's words can provide us many understandings that answers the various experiences we face in life.
神嘅說話能夠解答我哋所有嘅問題，能夠讓我哋面對所有嘅問題㗎。
Whether it be God's mercy.
不論係神嘅憐憫啦。
Or whether it's God's discipline.
或者係神嘅管教啦。
Or even God's love.
甚至係神嘅慈愛啦。
God's words can teach us about building our relationship with Him.
神嘅說話能夠讓我哋以佢更加有呢個親密嘅關係。
But also God's words can teach us how we ought to live harmoniously with one another.
神嘅說話亦都能夠教導我哋與人彼此之間和諧相處。
A good relationship with God, a good relationship with brothers and sisters, this is vital, especially in the latter days.
與神有美好嘅關係，與弟兄姊妹有美好嘅關係，呢個喺末世嚟講係非常之重要㗎。
Now, concerning living harmoniously with each other, there is a good story that teaches us how to focus on the good things in other people.
有關於與弟兄姊妹和睦相處有啲嘅例子亦都讓我哋嚟到去追求㗎。
So there's a story that goes like this.
有一個故事咁樣講。
Two friends were walking in the desert.
咁有兩個朋友咧，一齊喺呢個森林裏面嚟到行走。
And at one stage, as they were walking along, they had an argument.
咁喺佢哋行下路嘅時候，佢哋喺度爭執。
Their one friend slapped the other in the face.
咁有一個朋友咧，就用手掌打另一個朋友嘅面。
The one who got slapped was hurt.
咁被打嘅人啊，個面就好痛。
But without saying anything, he wrote in the sand, "Today my best friend slapped me in the face."
咁啊，佢冇出到聲，就喺沙嗰度啊寫上，今天我嘅朋友打咗我一巴掌。
So they kept on walking and then they found some water.
咁啊，佢哋就繼續咁走路啦，就嚟到有水嘅地方。
And so they decided to have a wash.
咁啊，就決定一齊嚟到沖個涼。
And then one of them, so the friend who had been slapped in the face, got stuck in the sand and started to drown.
咁啊，嗰個俾人打一巴掌嘅朋友咧，就就陷喺嗰個泥沙嘅裏面。
Was starting to drown.
開始係沉下去啦。
But his friend saved him.
但係佢嘅朋友咧就救咗佢喎。
So after he recovered from his shock,
咁從佢咁驚慌嘅情況下翻嚟嘅時候，
this friend wrote on the stone, "Today my best friend saved my life."
咁呢個人就喺嗰個石頭嗰度寫上，今天我嘅朋友救咗我一命。
So the friend who slapped and saved his best friend asked him the question.
所以嗰個用手掌打朋友嗰個人咧，就問佢一個問題。
After I hurt you, you wrote in the sand, but now you write in stone. Why?
當我打你嘅時候，你寫喺呢個沙上，現在你又寫喺呢個石頭上，點解咧？
So the other friend then replied,
咁嗰個朋友就回答啦。
When someone hurts us, we should write it in sand.
當人傷害我哋嘅時候，我哋應該寫喺呢個沙上。
So that the wind of forgiveness can blow it and remove it.
咁呢啲嘅風咧，就能夠將呢啲嘅沙吹散，就趕走佢。
In a way, forgiving other people.
意思就係話要嚟到係饒恕別人。
But when someone does something good for you,
但係當別人對你作出好事嘅時候，
you must write it in stone.
你就要寫喺呢個石頭上啦。
So that no wind could ever blow and remove it.
咁樣啲風咧，如何吹咧都唔能夠吹走啦。
So just like this story, let us learn to remember to see the good in other people, especially when they have done good for you.
從呢個事情，呢個故事，我哋就學習得到，當別人對我哋作出好事嘅時候咧，我哋就唔好嚟到係忘記。
Second question.
第二個問題。
The second question I'd like to ask is regarding our future life.
第二個問題就係關於我哋未來嘅人生。
The question is, have I done enough?
問題就係我所做嘅足夠嗎？
Whether it's to do with your physical life or spiritual life, have I done enough?
不論係肉身嘅生命或者係靈魂嘅生命，我做足夠嗎？
Have I worked out my salvation?
我有冇為我嘅永生嚟到係努力咧？
Have I worked out the salvation of all those who are dear to me?
我有冇為嗰啲我所親愛嘅人嘅靈魂嚟到係努力咧？
Now, perhaps our first reaction to this question is, of course.
或者我哋第一個嘅反應就係話，當然有啦。
And we are satisfied with that.
我哋就覺得係好滿意。
But we need to be honest with ourselves.
但係我哋要對自己誠實一下。
Can we ever do enough?
我哋有冇做得足夠？
Can we ever do enough?
我哋可唔可以做得足夠啲？
Now, whether we have regrets or not, this will actually show whether we could have done more or not.
呢個會唔會嚟到讓我哋係有啲懊悔？但係亦都讓我哋想下，我哋係咪做得足夠？
If we have regrets, then perhaps we could have done more.
如果我哋覺得係有些少懊悔嘅話，或者我哋應該係做多一啲。
Now, how we can answer this kind of question really depends on how we measure.
我哋如何嚟到回答呢個問題咧？就係我哋如何嚟到係度量呢個問題啦。
Do we measure against our own standard or God's standard?
我哋度量嘅時候係按照我哋嘅標準啦，還是係神嘅標準？
I'm sure we all know which standard is the most perfect, is the most ideal.
我哋大家都知道邊一個嘅標準係更加係完美。
The truth is that we could do more.
嗰個真實就係話我哋應該做得更多。
Perhaps we could spend more time to cultivate yourself with God's words.
或者我哋需要用更多嘅時間嚟到係靈修我哋自己。
Perhaps we could spend more time to communicate with God through prayer.
又或者我哋需要用更多嘅時間嚟到禱告與神交通。
Or perhaps I should communicate more with my family about their faith.
或者我哋需要用更多嘅時間嚟到關心我家人嘅信仰。
Perhaps I should be a role model at home to guide them in their faith.
或者我需要嚟到喺我嘅家庭裏面做一個榜樣嚟到帶領佢哋嘅信仰。
There are many aspects of life where we could possibly do more.
其實喺我哋嘅人生裏面有好多好多嘅方面我哋需要做得更多。
For example,
例如講
we might know of family members who are no longer focused on their faith or even attend services.
或者我哋知道有一個家庭佢哋唔再嚟到重視信仰啦，唔再嚟到參加教會嘅聚會啦。
Our family members.
我哋家庭嘅裏面嘅人。
But they do not heed our encouragement.
但係佢哋唔聽我哋嘅勸告。
We don't want to argue with them.
我哋亦都唔想同佢哋係有咩爭執嘅地方。
So we say to ourselves,
咁我哋自己就話
they're not that bad.
佢哋都唔錯㗎。
They're not evildoers.
佢哋都唔係做咩壞事㗎。
They just don't come to church services.
佢哋只係冇嚟到參加聚會啫。
Now the question now is whether we have compromised our faith.
問題就係話我哋有冇喺我哋嘅信仰上嚟到妥協咧？
If we say that this situation is acceptable, then we have made a compromise.
如果我哋覺得呢件事情係例外嘅話，我哋已經係妥協咗啦。
However, if we don't want to compromise our beliefs, and we want to show this to God.
我哋唔能夠喺信仰上妥協，我哋需要嚟到向神顯示我哋呢一個嘅心。
And that is, at a minimum, we should do is to seriously pray for our family members so that God mercifully opens a way.
就係最低限度我哋要嚟到為我哋嘅家庭嘅成員嚟到禱告，求神嚟到憐憫我哋。
Now, Job was a very good example of this kind of behavior.
咁約伯就係一個喺呢一方面非常之好嘅一個例子啦。
Let's read the book of Job, chapter 1.
請翻開約伯記第一章。
Job, chapter 1.
約伯記第一章。
Verse 1 to 2 and verses 4 to 5.
第一至到第二節，然後第四至到第五節。
There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. The 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did regularly. 請讀。
第一至到第二節，烏斯地有一個人名叫約伯，那人完全正直，敬畏神，遠離惡事。他生了7個兒子，3個女兒。他的家產有7000羊，3000駱駝，500對牛，500母驢。 便有許多僕婢，這人在東方人中就為至大。第4節，他的兒子按着日子各在自己家裏設擺筵席，就打發人去請了他們的3個姐妹來，與他們一同吃喝宴席。筵席的日子過了，約伯打發人去叫他們自潔。他清早起來，按照他們眾人的數目獻燔祭，因為他說恐怕我兒子犯了罪，心中離棄神。約伯常常這樣行。
Here records the regular practice of Job.
呢度記載約伯佢平常所做嘅事情。
He offered sacrifices and prayers regularly for his children.
佢常常嚟到為佢嘅兒子嚟到係禱告獻祭㗎。
Now Job did this in fear that as part of his children's daily living, they might have offended God.
約伯咁樣做咧，就係佢恐怕佢嘅兒女日常生活當中會犯罪得罪神。
Have we done or do we do the same for our family members?
我哋有冇咁樣做咧？我哋有冇為我哋嘅家庭嘅人咧咁樣去做咧？
Have we done the same for ourselves?
我哋對自己有冇咁樣做咧？
Have we prayed to God for forgiveness in fear that we might have unknowingly offended him?
我哋有冇禱告求神嚟到饒恕我哋我哋喺呢個不知不覺嚟到得罪神啦。
These are very valuable questions.
呢啲都係好寶貴嘅教訓啦。
Now, to be able to have this kind of behavior and action, it requires us to humbly realize that there's much more that we can do.
讓我哋能夠咁樣去做即係俾我哋知道我哋需要嚟到好清楚明白呢啲嘅問題。
Let's refer to the book of Philippians.
請翻開腓立比書
Philippians chapter 2,
第2章
verse 12 to 13.
12至到13節。
Philippians chapter 2, verse 12 to 13.
腓立比書第2章12至到13節。
Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do his good pleasure. 12
節，這樣看來，我親愛的弟兄，你們既是常信服，不但我在你們那裏，就是我而今不在你們那裏，更是信服的，就當恐懼正見，作成你們得救的功夫，因為你們立志行事，都是神在你們心裏運行，為要成就他的美意。
Here records Paul's encouragement to the members, which is very applicable to us today.
保羅嚟到係勉勵當時嘅信徒，亦都係其實係特別係勉勵我哋。
And this encouragement is that we should strive to work out our salvation and the salvation of those who are dear to us.
呢度話俾我聽，我哋要為我哋自己，而且係我哋親愛嘅人嚟到作成呢個得救嘅功夫。
Recognizing that there is much more that we can always do.
能夠係認識到其實我哋有咁多嘅地方需要係去做㗎。
And may God help us understand what is God's standard.
求神嚟到讓我哋明白到神嘅標準係乜嘢。
So that we shall never fall short of God's expectation.
讓我哋喺神嘅期望裏面，我哋唔會係虧欠神。
Now, the third question I would like to ask.
咁第三個我要問嘅問題
Have I forgotten to trust in God?
我有冇忘記咗要嚟到依靠神呢？
Now, the world sells us an image or an idea of what is success.
世界嘅成功標準
we are told about it.
世界嘅成功標準啦，我哋被人教導就係咁樣啦。
The world also tells us what is beautiful and what is the best.
世界教導我哋乜嘢係最好嘅，乜嘢係最美麗嘅。
Yet these things can be so far from the standard of God, which is described clearly in the Bible.
但係呢種嘅目標喺以聖經所記載嘅，完全係非常之遙遠㗎。
Worldly men, they strive and pursue these things.
世人佢哋努力追求呢啲嘅一切。
But yet they continue to encounter suffering, discontentment, and even shame.
但係佢哋會遇到唔滿意啦，或者係佢哋甚至係遇到嗰啲羞恥嘅事情。
Now, if these worldly things are supposedly to be the most successful, the most beautiful, and also the best,
若果呢啲世俗嘅事情被世人認為係最好、最成功嘅事情嘅話，
then why do they bring so many negative experiences?
點解佢哋喺人生嘅經驗裏面會遇到咁多負面嘅事情呢？
It is because these worldly things, they aren't really the best.
其實原因就係世上呢啲認為係好嘅事情唔係最好嘅。
Let's refer to the book of Ecclesiastes.
我哋請翻開呢個傳道書。
Ecclesiastes chapter 1.
第一章。
Verses 2 to 3 and verses 8 to 9.
2節至到3節，然之後8節至到9節。
Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun.
第2節，傳道者說：虛空的虛空，虛空的虛空，凡事都是虛空。人一切的勞碌，就是他在日光之下的勞碌，有什麼益處呢？第8節，萬事令人厭煩，人不能說中，眼看看不飽，耳聽聽不足。已有的事後必再有，已行的事後必再行。日光之下遍無新事。
Here the author of Ecclesiastes tells us about the emptiness of this life.
呢度嘅傳道書嘅作者啦，談論到人生係虛空㗎。
Worldly men will promote the attractive and exciting things of the world.
世人佢哋做一啲係想要帶動世界嘅事情。
But here the Bible verse tells us that these things can never truly satisfy.
聖經話俾我哋聽，呢啲嘅事情其實唔會真正帶俾我哋係滿足㗎。
Whether it's what you see or what you hear or what you possess, you will never be satisfied.
無論你所聽過你所看嘅，你所擁有嘅，永遠都唔能夠係填補你嘅心㗎。
I'm sure we all know this teaching, but we tend to forget.
其實我哋每一個人都知道呢個嘅教訓，但係我哋常常就係忘記啦。
A good example of this is that, according to men, the world has 7 wonders.
根據呢啲嘅原因啦，世人有7個嘅
wonderful things,
有7個
places.
有7個美麗嘅地方。
But did you know that the original 7 places or wonders have been replaced by a more modern set?
但係你知唔知道呢個7個美麗嘅地方已經被其他嘅嘢所淘汰咗啦？
And if these originals were the best, then why did they need to be replaced?
點解呢啲起初係最好嘅、最美麗嘅，點解會俾人嚟到係能夠係遮蓋佢哋嘅咧？
It's because worldly trends, worldly fashion, they evolve all the time.
因為呢啲世界嘅潮流、世界嘅時髦咧，呢啲常常會被後來嘅東西所嚟到證據㗎。
These things continually change in order to continue to attract people, to keep people interested.
呢啲嘅事情常常嚟到改變，因為係嚟到迎合人嘅需求。
But to those who follow Jesus Christ, we need to be wise.
但係對於所有跟從耶穌嘅人我哋需要嚟到聰明明白。
We need to be clear that the things of the world, they're not trustworthy. Rather, we should trust in God.
我哋要明白世界嘅事情係唔可靠嘅，反而可靠嘅就係我哋嘅神。
In 1 Samuel chapter 1, it records the story of Hannah.
咁喺呢個撒母耳記上第一章咧，就係講到哈拿嘅故事。
This story is a very good example of someone who trusted in God.
呢個故事就係講到一個人佢如何嚟到係信靠神。
Hannah was subjected to mocking by Peninnah, her sister-in-law.
咁呢個哈拿被佢佢嘅丈夫另一個妻子叫做比利拿咧嚟到欺負。
And this mocking was based upon worldly standards.
咁呢種嘅欺負啦，係按照世人嘅標準嚟做㗎。
For it was seemed to be shameful for Hannah to be barren.
就係話佢哋嘅標準就係哈拿唔能夠生育，呢個係認為係羞恥㗎。
Perhaps she was seen to be shameful to her husband, to even her family.
或者對佢嘅丈夫，或者對佢嘅屋企人，呢個係一個羞恥㗎。
But Hannah trusted in God and turned to him for help.
但係呢個哈拿佢係轉向神嚟到祈求神嘅幫助。
And because Hannah trusted in God,
因為哈
her
拿
trust
嚟到
wasn't
信靠神，
her trust in God was not in vain.
佢咁樣嘅信靠係冇白費㗎。
Because her request was granted as it was according to God's will.
因為佢所祈求嘅係按照神嘅旨意㗎。
And God granted her a son.
所以神就賜俾佢一個兒子。
And all this is recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 1.
呢啲嘅故事都記載喺呢個撒母耳記上第一章。
From verse 6 to 7.
第6至到第7節。
Verse 10 to 11.
第10至到11節。
Verse 19 to 20.
19至到20節。
Now, from this story, we can see that in our daily lives, we too can encounter suffering and hardship, which is based upon worldly standards.
呢啲嘅例子都係顯示出按照世人嘅標準，我哋都會受到呢啲嘅困難逼迫嘅事情。
But let us never forget to trust in God.
但係我哋然而唔好嚟到忘記嚟到信靠我哋嘅神。
For we are all different.
因為我哋每一個人都係唔同㗎。
We are all shaped differently by the experiences we encounter in life.
我哋喺我哋嘅人生裏面我哋所遭遇嘅事情，我哋大家都係唔同㗎。
Worldly standards, worldly values, they will change according to trends and fashion.
世上嘅標準，世上嘅認為係好嘅，都會隨着時代嘅潮流咧而被淘汰㗎。
The things that our God values and upholds never changes.
但係神嘅標準，神所要嘅，從來係唔會改變㗎。
While the world looks at the outer, the superficial, the surface things, God looks in the hearts of his people.
世上所睇嘅就係人嘅外表，但係然而神所睇嘅就係我哋人嘅內心。
So let us learn to trust in God.
所以我哋要學習嚟到係信靠神。
Let us trust in God's arrangement for us as well.
我哋亦都要信靠神為我哋所作嘅一切安排。
And believe that everything that He arranges for us will be the best.
我哋要相信神所為我哋安排嘅一切係最好嘅。
There's a story that teaches us about to remove the narrowness of our thinking.
有一個故事可以改變我哋狹窄嘅思想。
And it's called the cracked pot, the broken pot.
就係一個破爛嘅瓶子。
So in China, there was a water bearer who had two large pots, water pots.
咁喺China，中國咧有一個破爛嘅瓶子。
A water bearer, a person who carries water, he had 2 water pots.
OK，就係一個擔嘢嘅人有2桶嘅水。
And he would hang each of the water pots on each side of the large pole, the stick.
就係用一條好長嘅擔嚟到擔住2桶嘅水。
Now, although he had 2 water pots, one of them had a crack in it.
咁呢2桶嘅水有一桶咧就破裂咗啦。
The other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water.
咁另一個咧係完全嘅冇破爛，而且每一次都帶俾佢足夠嘅水。
So every time the water bearer walked from the stream to his house, this cracked pot would only deliver half full.
所以呢個擔水嘅人從嗰個河仔擔水到佢嘅屋企咧，到咗屋企嘅時候，嗰個破裂嘅水桶咧就只剩下半桶嘅水。
So for 2 years, this went on every day.
咁呢啲事情一直發生咗2年啦。
And the water bearer, the person, could only deliver 1.5 pots full of water to his house.
咁呢個擔水嘅人佢只能夠每一次擔咗1桶半嘅水翻到屋企。
And of course, the perfect pot was very proud of his accomplishments because it was perfect.
咁當然呢個冇破裂嘅水桶咧，佢就好自傲啦，因為佢能夠達到主人嘅要求。
But the poor cracked pot was very ashamed because of its imperfection.
但係呢個破裂嘅水桶咧，佢覺得好內疚，因為佢載翻嚟嘅水係唔足夠。
Very unhappy because this cracked pot could only deliver half of what the pot was supposed to deliver.
呢個破裂嘅水桶咧，佢就覺得好唔高興啦，因為佢只能夠係帶翻半桶嘅水。
So after 2 years, this cracked pot said to the water bearer by the stream.
咁有一次呢個破裂嘅水桶咧喺河邊咧就對呢個擔水嘅人咁講。
I am very ashamed of myself.
我覺得非常之內疚。
Because of this crack in my side, water leaks out all the way to your house.
因為呢個破裂咧一直咁漏水。
And so I can never deliver a full pot of water for you.
所以我從來都冇嚟到帶俾你半桶嘅水。
A full pot of water.
半桶成滿咗。
So the water bearer said to the pot.
咁嗰個擔水嘅人就對呢個水桶咁講。
I have always known about your flaw, your crack.
我已經知道你嘅缺點喺邊度。
Do you notice that on the path to the house, there are only flowers on your side of the path, but not on the other side?
你有冇發覺啦？從河去到我屋企路邊只有你嗰邊咧先至有花而另一桶嗰邊咧佢哋係冇花嘅。
Because I knew about your crack, therefore I planted flower seeds on your side of the path. So every day when we walk back to the house, you watered my flowers.
因為我知道你係有破裂嘅地方，所以我就喺你嗰邊咧撒咗啲嘅種，所以每一次你漏嘅水咧就係澆灌呢啲嘅種子啦。
And for 2 years, I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate my house.
所以喺呢2年裏面我就嚟到摘翻呢啲美麗嘅花啦，嚟到裝飾我嘅屋企。
So without you being just the way you are, there would be not this beauty to grace my house.
所以沒有你嘅話咧，就唔會帶俾我嘅屋咁靚嘅屋企啦。
God's arrangement is truly the best.
所以神嘅安排咧係最美好嘅。
We should trust in God's arrangement.
我哋要話相信神為我哋所安排嘅。
We turn to God not necessarily just to present our requests to Him.
我哋嚟到向神祈求，唔係單單係向神求東西。
But actually, God is a willing listener.
然而其實神係願意聽我哋講噶。
And we can share so much with Him.
我哋可以常常以佢嚟到分享我哋心中嘅事情。
And by trusting in God,
接着嚟到信靠神。
God can lead our way.
神可以帶領我哋嘅路。
So that we can experience the will of God being fulfilled in our lives.
讓我哋能夠體驗到神能夠話喺我哋人生當中充滿咗呢個希望。
Let's read some concluding Bible verses.
我哋睇最後一節嘅經文。
Psalms 139.
詩篇139篇。
Verses 1 to 6 and verse 14.
1至到6節同埋13節。
Verse 14.
14節。
O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have hedged me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well.
第一節，要話你已經鑒察我，認識我。我坐下，我起來，你都曉得。你從遠處知道我的意念。我行路，我躺臥，你都細察。你也深知我一切所行的。要話我舌頭上的話，你沒有一句不知道的。你在我前後環繞我，按手在我身上。這樣的知識奇妙，是我不能測的，至高是我不能及的。14節，我要稱謝你，因我受造奇妙可畏，你的作為奇妙，這是我深深知道的。
As these verses tells us, God understands.
從呢啲嘅經文，我哋就知道，原來神佢係明白㗎。
He understands everything that is to do with us.
關於我哋一切嘅事情神都明白㗎。
Whatever we are going through physically, mentally, spiritually, God understands.
不論我哋要身上啦、心靈上啦、靈性上啦，所遇到一切嘅事情神都明白㗎。
All glory be unto our Heavenly Father. Amen.
願一切榮耀歸給天上嘅神。阿門。
Let's sing hymn 140.
請唱讚美詩140首。